very good morning to all, and a warm welcome on a less warm day today to the second day of IIA Mahacon 2022. It's a great pleasure to have you all with us today. We begin with the keynote address by architect Sonali Rastogi, who's been with us today from Delhi, and it's a pleasure to introduce her. Architect Sonali Rastogi is the co-founding partner of Morphogenesis, one of India's renowned architecture and urban design practices, with offices across Delhi, Mumbai, and Bangalore. She's a leading speaker in sustainable design and has lectured at numerous reputed universities and conferences globally. Her vision of putting together Indian contemporary architecture onto a global platform has been worthy of the highest honor. She and her partner Manit are the only Indian laureates at the Singapore Institute of Architects Getz Award for their contribution towards putting Indian architecture on the world stage. She has authored over 1,000 publications and journals and is a recipient of over 100 global awards. Her belief in environmental design has resulted in the formulation of Morphogenesis copyrighted design philosophy, SOUL, an acronym for Sustainable, Optimized, Unique and Livable. These parameters define the inquiry process that shapes the architecture of Morphogenesis. A very warm welcome to you, Sonali ma'am. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Good morning. I know you all partied really hard yesterday, so thank you for coming here this morning. I'm really honored to be here. I speak in colleges, various conferences, but I'm always most intimidated when I'm going to speak to fellow architects because I feel that they already know everything I have to say. So it's quite a challenge. And I'm going to approach today's conversation with some of the awakenings I've had personally and shared with my team at Morphogenesis in the last 2 years of the pandemic. And it has made me look at some of the work I've done in the past. It has, what I want to do in the future, and how I can incorporate learnings which have benefited some communities. Because for me, after 26 years of practice, let's say quarter century gone, hopefully I'm practicing for another 25 years, hopefully. It's going to be about inclusive communities. And sometimes it's happened in the past that the project has landed up including communities. I know from here onwards it will always include communities. So with that little background, I'll take you through a few slides. Excuse me, but some of the slides were oriented for World Architecture Festival, so they have dollars and all those kind of things written, but forgive me for that. Okay, so this particular slide talks about, when we were in lockdown 1, sitting at home, not even virtual working had really started in the first 2 or 3 weeks, and this is the kind of news we were seeing. Any channel, reverse migration, reverse migration, reverse migration. Then in June, when some of our sites started to open, there were still no people coming back to work. And then as people started to come back, most of my conversation when I would go to site was, oh, when did you leave Delhi and when did you get back? And from what I understood, that all of them talked about their journeys home and how almost every next person in that journey home was a construction worker. And this was my experience. I'm talking about in and around Delhi because that's what I could access at that time. But from stories I've read and colleagues I've spoken to around India, it was really every city story. the construction workers were the predominant people in these kind of pictures. And most of these people have worked on your sites, my sites. So whilst the pandemic has hit all of us professionally, has hit us personally, but I think the fact that it has hit the people the worst is the ones who produce our vision, the ones who make our buildings that we dream of. These are the ones that give life to our dreams, and it's hit them the worst. And if you look at the hotspots of migration, I mean, Bihar, Odisha, and people from Bihar, UP, they go across the country for construction. So that got us thinking that why do people travel across India, and why can't we have a little bit of decentralized growth? Why can't we have growth where it should be and where the project is? Why can't people from there get involved? Because it's not that we don't have people who are languishing with no work and dying craftsmen, and we've all heard the stories of how we need to include artisans, dying craftsmen. So we went and looked back at a really old project. This was finished in 2008, and it was not intended to be, but it kind of became, I would say, global pin-up building. And it won a lot of international awards. This is the Pearl Academy of Fashion, extremely low-cost building. And so this project, simply due to lack of funds with the client, we landed up reskilling so many crafts communities, and it was built at an extremely low cost, less than $200 per square meter. That time dollar was only 70. So this is a fully finished building. So this building took, I don't need to talk about context to you all practice it, but this building took a lot from the Rajasthan context in order to cut the cost down. So jalis and baulis were the two things that were adapted, and the bauli is in the center of the building. It's subterranean, like bauli should be. So instead of building a basement, we built a bauli, and the bauli is entirely filled by STP water. And this is what because in Jaipur you can't, and this is industrial area outside Jaipur, you can't be outside for like 5 minutes. So, but this is the way the students spend majority of their time outside, sheltered in the subterranean bauli. And this is the jali skin, the second skin, as typically used in Rajasthan. Actually, this is usually simply. It's not even used like very beautifully or exotically. It's used very simply. And the jalis that you see getting made were made by the people who make these cementatious boundary walls all across Jaipur. So you build a solid boundary wall and then you put one line of jali across it. So these are cementatious jalis, not the fantastic stone jalis of Jaipur. And for a year and a half, there were so many of them which were given employment on the site. And the next thing that inspired us was the matka. And this is how it inspired us. So the project uses no insulation and it uses matkas. And these matkas were bought at, I can't remember, but 1 rupee or 1 rupee 25 paisa matka. And all the potters were given place to live on the site, on the construction site. From then on, I believe there are many buildings in Rajasthan who have rediscovered what they knew many, many centuries ago, that this is how it should be done. So when we build in Rajasthan or any very hot, dry climate, at Morphogenesis, we no longer use insulation from 2008. You can see the site in progress. And at that time, the energy performance index for a 5-star building actually used to be 110. Griha, now it's 90, so I edited the slide to 90, and this building achieved only 25. So that time when this was done, we didn't have our self-goal of going to net zero, but it achieved 25, so it's hardly any consumption of energy. And the best part is 120 potters and jali makers found employment on this site for over a year. So a project that is in construction, 2 buildings are finished and 2 more are finishing. This is the Itc Mixed Use Campus. It's in Rajarhat outside Calcutta. This project involves contextually, emotionally and physically, the artists of Bengal. So it's a hugely west-facing, the entire facade was a west-facing site. Simple passive design tells us that we shouldn't be opening any windows or glazing or anything to that side. So it started by keeping it solid, and this is Bengal, where tradition and culture, much like Maharashtra, still thrives. The Bengali culture is very much inherent in their minute-to-minute existence throughout the day. And what I was told by the client, that even the non-Bengalis, when they move to Bengal, become Bengalis. So to keep that alive, and we heard so much about languishing artists, Bengal school artists having no work, this, that. So we launched in several daily newspapers a competition inviting artists to come and spend days. They were paid 5,000 rupees a day, and to just sketch. And the theme was Seasons and Life of a Bengali. So many of them came. They helped us create Bengal art identity. And I talked to you about, which I'm not going to spend much time, because you all understand this, how the sun moves and why we needed to create the flat blank facades for the buildings to be sustainable. So these were our inspirations. When we, of course, like we all do now, when we did some internet research, these were the images that kept coming up. Bengali rains, humidity, art, painting, puja, festivals. So these were the themes given to the artists. And we actually went out and met artists. And we invited them. We said, look, you get employment once a year for about 2 months. Why don't you come and work on this site? So these on the left-hand side were the images that came from the 3-day workshop. And we had over 500-600 images created by Bengal artists. On the right-hand side is my interpretation of a lot of these sketches, which could be done partially by CNC cutting and rest by hand. Because and the hand was not just to patronize them and give them employment, but to actually do it in an optimal cost. So part machine, part hand worked out as the best solution, and rationalization of the sketch to a more minimal line work was something that was my personal learning as to what could be the border of machine and hand. Then, of course, this particular thing is machine cut by metal, but this was a lot of what we understood whilst we were working with artists on the site, that I never knew this, but Tagore had an environmental twist to all his poetry. And this is something I learned from the artists on the site in the 3-day workshop. So this was a very interesting, I have this slide here because this is for some of you, I don't know if any of you read Bengali. This is a crossword puzzle made out of Tagore's references to the environment in his various poems. And that is the facade of the entire building, convention center there coming up. And this was the total finished project. These images are pre-pandemic, 2 years, so now these are up. So the basic 10 mm cutting is done by the CNC machine. Then it comes to site and it is contoured by hand to give the dark and the light shadow within the groove. And then it is painted inside with resin, because by testing on site we realized that sometimes when the sun is very bright we were losing the images. So that's what this gentleman on the side is doing, creating deeper crevices and filling them with resin. And now it has been 4 years and there are many such people employed on this site who otherwise have 2 to 3 months of employment just before puja time. And the stone is going up in the curtain glazing way. So it's stone glazing. And this is 10,000 square meters of facade which is providing employment to those artists. So this is a a really, really interesting project. The project was conceived as a community project, so it's not that I have layered on a community to this. This was a competition project that we won about 4.5 years ago. This was a global competition, 3-stage competition actually. First 30 winners, then 6, then 1. And this is a community of Surat diamond merchants. They got themselves 28 acres of land, and they wanted a single office building. And what I understood from their brief, that there is equal voting rights of the richest diamond merchant that has 4 private planes to his name, and the guy who doesn't actually have an office but will trade in the courtyard. So this is 70 lakh square feet of a single building. It works like an airport. It has security like an airport. It has only one-way traffic. It has 9 building entry points, and it has 18 site access points. And you'll be surprised that there are about 1 lakh people who will work here, who own offices, but there is also provision for the same amount of people who will trade in the open and in the corridors. And why I am talking about the corridors is because that is that red spine that you see going through is at the thinnest, it's 8 meters, and it widens to about 16 meters in places. It's an entire public area. And in keeping with our desire to make buildings consume as less energy as possible, 1 lakh people will be trading and moving in this at all times, and it is not air conditioned. And I'll show you pictures. So this is the community it was made for, and this is what they do. So there are 70,000, right before, why did they make it? So 70,000 diamond workers would wake up every morning at 4 o'clock, leave their houses by 4:30, and reach 5:30 leave Surat station, 9:30 to 1:30 work in Mumbai, 1:30 to 2:30 lunchtime, and for small traders, that's when they trade diamonds just sitting around in the open. And again work till 6, reach Surat at 10:30, wake up again at 4. Okay, so this is their life. So all of these 70,000 have relocated back, and more that were locally there in Surat everywhere have collaborated, and they will be 1 lakh plus 1 lakh people in this building at all times. So this is a typical day of how they are dealing with. You can see the kind of spaces they work in, and now they will have something that they as a community petitioned for. They funded it. The project is finished despite more than 2 years of pandemic. It is finished in 4 years, and as the gentleman before me said, they worked on the glass part of it. As we speak, it is getting inaugurated. Its official inauguration is held back due to the current war situation, but people are moving in, and Modi ji will inaugurate it a little later. So this was learning from the client. Restoring community life. So this is restored community life to people who had no other life other than going to work and back. They told us that sometimes it's more than a month before they see their own children in their own house that they live in. This is changing that. This community has restored its community life back. And this is such a brilliant community, because I learned so much. Like I said, you deal with so much diamond. How does somebody not get tempted to take away a little bit, put it in their mouth and just walk off? They said that in our community, if there is one person cheating ever, or even suspected of cheating, their entire family will be excommunicated and will never find employment in any corner of the world. So this community supports itself, is very cohesive, and you'll be surprised that the guy who trades in the courtyard and the guy who owns the full tower have the same voting right when it came to approval of design. So this was an extremely community-centric project, and the judging of the design to win It was a global tender, but the judging was also done by every social strata within their community. So, I think one of the reasons that they were inclined for us to build this project was that we used this diagram on the top left as the way to organize the project. And so each of these towers houses different kind of offices, like 200 square feet, 400, 600, 1000. But each tower has a similar appearance and a similar status. And they are all linked to the central spine in the same way. So we were inspired by the way the spine is designed. And that's why that diagram was our opening diagram of how we intend to move people. And the other thing was the movement. Everybody's movement passage is common. The whole community moves through one community spine. There is no VIP, there is no VIP access, there is no VIP security. So this building was a real learning in democracy and people movement. And they are of course extremely brilliant businessmen. So the target given was that entrance gate pe uska time login ho jata hai. So I cannot waste time for him to get across this campus to his office. So it has to be in the least possible time. So from every individual can, in such a large building, can get to their office in 7 minutes. So this is the central spine, which is completely naturally ventilated, microclimate controlled, and the opening of the mouth, I don't need to explain to you all, but dealt with a lot about accelerating the wind movement during humid times. And then it has been moderated with radiant cooling. So this, to what I have been told, it's an indigenous radiant cooling system. We have used not German technology, as it was unaffordable in this project. And I think I have some images to show you later. The courtyards and the distances between the buildings, of course, we did a shallow analysis and made sure that at least 50% of the courtyards in any season are shaded enough for them to carry out their open air transaction. The courtyard, which goes up to 16 meters at times, has a lot of like indoor gardens. So this is a section through an indoor garden, and it has several floors of courtyards, which is also letting the heat come up and creating natural ventilation and creating green lungs throughout the projects. So there are 9 landscape courts, 14 floors of green lungs, 15 acres of bazaar style landscape. Why we call it bazaar style is because there is eating going on, trading going on, festivals going on. And now, thankfully, we suggested, why don't you create, you create diamonds, which is very artistic and creative, but you are such a powerful body, why don't you create an art gallery? So now 4 of the landscapes have sculpture galleries as well, which was the first, because this client, for me, only talks money, precision, time, and diamonds. That's it. That is the total conversation. So one time he said, look, for the community, sculpture will be a great idea. So 4 courts now have sculptures. So we had to understand the outdoor informal transaction nature. So many of them are members but not owners. So members will transact outside in Surat climate. And this is the local version of radiant cooling installation. That is the 8 meters, the narrowest part of the corridors. And as you can see on the right, there are windows but no glass. So this is completely naturally ventilated project. And I have been there, of course, except for 2 months when there was some political unrest in the lockdown and the workers were not allowed to work because somebody came and sort of attacked them. Some political story was going on. Except for that time, they have all been housed in the project, and they have worked throughout, and the project is finished with full interiors. And I have been there at all sorts of very hot times, and these corridors are completely functional. So that is the project. These are various stages of construction that the images are from. Yeah, These are all during construction images. I apologize, I don't have the finished projects. It's still to be photographed. It's getting cleaned. So that's one of the large sculptures coming up, which is the entire reception lobby actually is now sculptures. Even the reception table is a sculpture. So this is coming from a story about the boatmen of Surat. So this is about water and boats. So the entire reception is inspired by that kind of sculpture. And you can see a lot of sculptures coming up in the courtyards. So this is the first for diamond traders. And that is, so for us, this building, of course, by building physics, which you all are well aware of, is about reducing the load on the environment and being the world's largest building. If it can function with 45 or 50 EPI, then I'm hoping it will set some examples that we can do it in India and others can learn. And socio-economic is, I won't take responsibility for it. It was a learning. It is this community which inspires me like no other community has ever. The way they stick together, the way they brought the world's largest building so quietly. I mean, it's not made any newspaper headlines. It's not there all over the world. I mean, just to put it in perspective, this is 70 lakh square feet. The previous world's largest building is the Pentagon, which is 50 lakh square feet. Okay, and everybody knows what the Pentagon looks like, right? Nobody knows what Surat Diamond Bourse looks like. But this is where I want to reach out to all of us in the design community. You know, there is such fantastic work going on. The two in India, the two projects you talked about, I know of one and I've been to one of Bimal Bhai. You know, there are very few works that get the appreciation they need to get so that Indian architecture finds its true place in a global discourse. And our clients do work very quietly, we do work very quietly. Whereas I know one of my professors and mentors when I was studying at the IIA built the Jewish extension at the Berlin Museum and then spent 1.5 years not working at architecture but traveling around the world talking about his architecture. You know, making people aware of the cause that he had served, making people aware of the Jewish story, making people aware of his responses and understanding. And he went missing in my final year. I said, where Daniel Leaf's kid was all over the world, right? So I feel that our communities are so strong, their vision, the vision, this socio-economic vision was of this community. I just participated in it. And I just wish that our voices are heard around the world to get our rightful place as leaders in architecture that we had in the past. I think we have it now, the world doesn't know it. So this is some of the in-construction pictures, and you know, they're so proud throughout. They've been calling various people, showing it. People from Antwerp have been coming, from Hong Kong. These are all the diamond communities around the world. And they're surprised that what India is building silently. And some of these are my team at the bottom. At the same time as this project was finishing, this is a project really close to my heart. In the last couple of years, it's one of the smallest projects in size I've worked. But I brought it to show you because this project finished, most of it was done in the pandemic. And this is where my new mantra of decentralized growth has come up. Now, most of you would have seen this shop called Forest Essentials, right? So this is the production facility for Forest Essentials and 100% production facility. So they sell in 80 countries and everything is produced in just that. Okay. What you don't know that Forest Essentials is 50% owned by a global cosmetic company called Estee Lauder. Estee Lauder has very strict global standards of how things should be produced. Whilst Ayurveda would allow us to produce it in very many ways, but this is an Ayurvedic product which is produced in X amount of humidity, X amount of temperature, X amount of clean air, clean room. And so this is a building for Forest Essentials and Estee Lauder together. So we had to meet Estee Lauder criteria. Whether Ayurveda requires it or not is a different issue. But we had to meet their criteria as well as provide all production for Forest Essentials. The site was on a hill called Lodsi, which when you land in Dehradun, you have to go 2.5 hours up on a hill. Final 1 kilometer, there was no road, there is no electricity supply, and the only water is a nearby spring. So no electricity, no water, no road, and then there were few skilled construction workers that had started the work, and then lockdown happened, they also disappeared. So we had 4 workers left on the site, 4. Okay, so then we changed our construction detailing, and the entire project continued to get built by the local people on the hill. So anybody, whenever they were free, 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, they would come and they would build. Now the reason they would do this is the entire hill is supported by forest essentials. So all, I think there's 70 or 80 families, something like that, that live on this hill. All of them are directly or indirectly supported by forest essentials. There is no other means of formal employment. So they would all come, let's build our own factory. And the cost, as you can see, is only $250 per square meter. So this is what this one facility does with no electricity, no water, no road. Okay, retails to 80 stores across India, caters to over 400 hotels and resorts, and exports product to over 120 countries worldwide. This is the hill that it is located on. That road that you're seeing stops just 1 kilometer short of reaching the site. So this is the style of construction they know. What you see in the top, this is the style they know. So we had just come up to Plinth and we changed our construction to this style. And you can see that woman walking, collecting the Gaushala. That is a woman who brings the cows every day and gives them the milk to use in the products. These are all women of the hill that sort everything. These pictures are actual. The actual of the women who work on this project. You can see the project on top of the hill in the bottom left. So 800 people live on this hill. Sorry, I said 800 families, 800 people, 150 hutments. In taking inspiration of how they live, they live in this Kholi style, which works with the temperatures of that area. And we divided our manufacturing and packaging based on that. And these are all local people who built the building, part the way we build it, because also as much stone as I would have liked to use, sustainability did not permit me to excavate. So this mountain has a lot of top loose stone. So with the limited stone that could be used without blasting and using some brickwork, that's how this project was put up. And all workers were unskilled even to what we call unskilled on our sites. They were even more unskilled. They were basically small farmers farming on little patches of land, most of them. And nothing was wasted. So once before, somebody had tried to build something on this site. And there were just some little wooden foundations of wood and some foundations of it left on the site. So everything was excavated and reused. Everything was reused on the site. Nothing was wasted. Because somewhere the shortage of electricity and water just gave us this drive to make it net zero and to make it completely sustainable. So reuse, recycle also became a very big part of this. So even if it was like a little bit of sarya but left, we reused it. This is the finished facility. And what is really interesting, and I'll tell you how communities help themselves. So there's an Ayurveda research library, small little room, 400 square feet inside this, where the 2 or 3 doctors who supervise the process, they sit. So the mothers asked that we want to work longer, like we bring all the herbs by lunchtime, but we want to work longer, but as long as our children can come and sit in the library and do the homework, then we don't have to go home, then we can work the whole day, because this is so much more comfortable than their own home. So now post-school, the children come here. So there are about 24 children who study in their Ayurveda library post-school. So this is again about a community. So as an architect, like who am I to tell a client ki isko udhar bitha do, right? So, but these are cases where the community has been involved in the building, so they felt empowered to ask to use it in a certain way, and they use it in that way. So all the things that, all of us think about when we are in first year, second year college, and we think about courtyards being used in a certain way, and we think of, reusing spaces in different ways. But my experience of the largest and the smallest project I've handled in the last couple of years has been that when communities come together, they do that interpretation better than architects. We are only enablers. And that is a finished project. So as you can see, this project was not about like some sort of wow architecture that is creating some sort of visceral emotions towards a fantastic visual. No, this was just a very simple architecture built together with the people, but built to global standards that when ST Lauder came for inspection before production started, not one snag could they find. And completely solar powered and has excess 9 kilowatt extra power generated. And the entire water is the stream water with the foundation that we dug up that got made into the underwater tank. So complete stream water for making these world-class products, for drinking, for bathing, for everything, and just stream water storage and rooftop storage. So, from this, I stand here before you with a commitment that this pandemic has made me think things that I probably was taught as a student, but somewhere in the practice of architecture, maybe they didn't get as much importance as they should. But today, my only job for the next 25 years is to develop disruptive strategies for the built environment where communities are affected, and communities will help me. I know that. I've seen it, I've experienced it. So in my goal, communities will help me, and it is time to do a lot because we are the world's youngest nation and we only have to build. We have to still really urbanize. We are the fastest urbanizing nation. So to say, no, I'm not going to build, I am not Europe where I'm not building and I'm, kind of conserving. No, I'm going to build. But I'm going to do a lot more with my resources with a lot less. And my communities in my country will help me, support me, and teach me how to do it. Thank you.